outbreak. The invasion of Iraq was clearly the overriding focus and major factor impacting the markets even during the SARS crisis. This is precisely why when the outbreak peaked, the retracement of the asset price occurred rather quickly. See Figure 4.6. The 16th of March, over 150 suspect and probable cases of SARS are reported from around the world. The 18th of March, cases are now being reported in Canada, Germany, Taiwan, China, Thailand, and the United Kingdom as well as in Hong Kong, Vietnam, and Singapore. The cumulative total of cases reported to WHO is 219 cases and 4 deaths. Hong Kong reports 123 cases, Hanoi 57, and Singapore 23. Data indicate that the overwhelming majority of cases occur in healthcare workers, their family members, and others having close face-to-face contact with patients, supporting the view that SARS is spread by contact with droplets when patients cough or sneeze. This is why there was tremendous panic and fear. The people who were supposed to be providing health care to those who became ill were also getting sick and dying. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. 57. Table 4.1 continued. Date. Event. The 19th of March, the brother-in-law of the Guangdong doctor dies in a Hong Kong hospital. The 20th of March, the United States reports its first cases. The cumulative total of cases climbs to 306, with 10 deaths. The 22nd of March, 13 countries on 3 continents report a cumulative total of 386 cases and 11 deaths. The 23rd of March, a WHO FIVE person GOARN team arrives in Beijing and seeks permission to travel to Guangdong province. The 24th of March, the Singapore Ministry of Health announces home quarantine measures whereby all contacts of SARS patients will be required to stay at home for 10 days. More than 300 persons are affected. The 25th of March, 9 air passengers linked to the 15th of March flight from Hong Kong to Beijing develop SARS after returning to Hong Kong. The flight is eventually linked to cases in 22 passengers and 2 flight attendants. Scarborough Grace Hospital in Toronto is closed to new patients and visitors. The 26th of March, China reports a cumulative total of 792 cases and 31 deaths in Guangdong province from the 16th of November 2002 to the 28th of February 2003. Officials had previously reported 305 cases and 5 deaths from mid-November to the 9th of February. With the new data from China, the world cumulative total of cases soars to 1,323, with 49 deaths. Chinese intransigence over admitting it had a SARS problem created a miasma of doubt toward authorities handling the crisis in China and Hong Kong. It would cost the mayor of Beijing and the head of the Chinese Health Ministry their jobs. This denial would change eventually, and the Chinese would become very aggressive in pursuing the disease. This shift helped bring about the end of the outbreak as scientists would gain access to patients in the country and begin the research. However, the damage to the financial markets was already occurring. Ontario health officials warn of a possible health emergency. The 27th of March, scientists in the WHO laboratory network report major progress in the identification of the causative agent, with results from several labs consistently pointing to a new member of the coronavirus family. Hong Kong announces the closure of schools until the 6th of April and places 1,080 people under quarantine. Chinese authorities report SARS cases in other parts of China. WHO issues more stringent advice to international travelers and airlines, including recommendations on screening at certain airports. This helps contribute to the free fall in the airline stocks and the currencies of the Far East. Continues. 58. Infectious diseases. Table 4.1 continued. Date. Event. The 28th of March, China joins WHO collaborative networks. Some airlines in affected countries begin screening departing international travelers. Financial analysts assess effects on stock markets and predict significant economic consequences if the outbreak is not controlled by June. The 29th of March, Drive. Carlo Urbani, the WHO infectious disease specialist who was the first WHO officer to identify the outbreak of this new disease and treat the earliest cases in Hanoi, dies of SARS in Thailand. The 30th of March, Canadian health officials close York Central Hospital to new patients and request hundreds of its employees to quarantine themselves. Thousands of Toronto residents face quarantine at home. Note: this was near the end of the negative impact on the Canadian dollar. It resumed its pre-SARS upward trend against the US dollar. Hong Kong health authorities announced that 213 residents of the Amoy Gardens housing estate have been hospitalized with SARS since reporting on the disease began. Of this total, 107 reside in a single wing of the 35-story Block E building. Most patients from Block E live in vertically interrelated flats. The 31st of March, health authorities in Hong Kong issue an unprecedented isolation order to prevent the further spread of SARS. In Singapore, a 64-year-old vegetable hawker at a large wholesale market visits his brother in Singapore General Hospital. The 1st of April. The 2nd of April. In Hong Kong, the number of cases linked to Amoy Gardens continues to grow, strongly suggesting that the disease has spread beyond its initial focus in hospitals, with tertiary as well as secondary cases almost certainly occurring. WHO epidemiologists determined that since the 19th of March 9 residents of Beijing, Taiwan, China, and Singapore have developed SARS following travel to Hong Kong. WHO recommends that persons traveling to Hong Kong and Guangdong province consider postponing all but essential travel until further notice. This is the most stringent travel advisory issued by WHO in its 55-year history. This aggressive action by WHO caused a further spike in the US dollar against the Singapore dollar and other Far Eastern currencies. However, this was the beginning of the end for the move. At this time, the Singapore government moved quickly to quarantine and isolate those with the disease. Ultimately, this contributed to stopping the spread of the disease. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. 59. Table 4.1 continued. Date. Event. Keep in mind that the announcement occurred close to the trough of the event. Perhaps the worst warnings could be taken as the all clear for the financial markets. It may be that the screaming from the mountaintop was thought to signal that authorities were finally putting all their resources to work and doing everything they could to stop the spread of the disease. It's the darkest before the dawn scenario. The 3rd of April. The 4th of April. The 7th of April. The 8th of April. The 9th of April. The Chinese Minister of Health appears on national television to address SARS-related issues. China begins daily electronic reporting of cases and deaths, nationwide by province. Contact tracing by Singapore health authorities traces 94 SARS cases back to the country's index case, linked to the Metropole Hotel. Morgan Stanley chief economist Stephen Roach estimates the global economic impact of SARS at about $30 billion United States dollars. Accumulative total of 2,671 cases and 103 deaths are reported from 17 countries. The WHO team further expresses concern about the situation in Beijing, where only a minority of hospitals make daily reports of SARS cases. Contact tracing is not carried out systematically in Beijing, and health authorities fail to investigate rumors vigorously. The 10th of April, a growing number of investigative media reports suggest that cases in Beijing military hospitals are not being frankly reported. The 11th of April, South Africa reports its first probable SARS case. Cases have now been reported in 19 countries on 4 continents. The 14th of April, the WHO team in Beijing fails to secure permission to visit military hospitals. The cumulative number of worldwide cases passes the 3,000 mark. The 15th of April, the Beijing team is given permission to visit military hospitals. A first visit is made. No reporting of findings is authorized. Hong Kong reports 9 SARS deaths, the largest number of deaths for a single day reported to date. The 16th of April, exactly 1 month after its establishment, the WHO laboratory network announces conclusive identification of the SARS causative agent, an entirely new coronavirus unlike any other human or animal member of the coronavirus family. In Hong Kong, doctors report that SARS patients from the Amoy Gardens cluster are not responding to treatment as well as patients from other clusters. The WHO team in Beijing estimates that the number of cases in the city is in the range of 100 to 200. The estimate contrasts sharply with the 37 cases officially reported 2 days previously. The team is granted permission to visit 1 military hospital. Continues. 60. Infectious diseases. Table 4.1 continued. Date. Event. The 17th of April. The 18th of April. The 19th of April. The 20th of April. Economic analysts in the Far East estimate initial SARS-related damage to regional GDP growth at United States dollars and 60 cents $15 billion. China's losses, at 2.2 billion United States dollars, are the highest, but Hong Kong, where the outbreak has already cost 1.7 billion United States dollars, is the biggest SARS-related economic casualty. In Hong Kong, retail sales have fallen by half since mid-March, tourism arrivals from mainland China have fallen 75% to 80%, and the entertainment and restaurant industries have recorded an 80% drop in business. This is about the trough for the move as the disease is just about to reach its peak infection period. The old saw about buying when there's blood in the streets is in play. The WHO team in Beijing expresses strong concern over inadequate reporting of SARS cases in military hospitals as rumors about undisclosed cases mount. Hong Kong officials release the findings of an extensive investigation into a possible environmental cause of the Amoy Gardens cluster of cases. Attention is focused on possible transmission via the sewage system, though many other routes of exposure are also investigated. In an unusual feature, 66% of patients in the Amoy Gardens cluster present with diarrhea. In most other clusters of cases, diarrhea is typically seen in only 2% to 7% of cases. China's top leaders advise officials not to cover up cases of SARS. Toronto authorities investigate a cluster of 31 suspect and probable SARS cases in members of a charismatic religious group, the health care workers who treated them, and close family and social contacts. Concern centers on opportunities for widespread community transmission during two large gatherings of the religious group on 28 and the 29th of March. The Vietnamese government considers closing its 1,130-kilometer border with China. Beijing authorities announced 339 previously undisclosed cases of SARS, bringing the cumulative total of SARS cases in China to 1,959. Chinese authorities further announced that the traditional week-long May Day holiday will be shortened. The mayor of Beijing and the Minister of Health, both of whom had downplayed the SARS threat, are removed from their Communist Party posts. Singaporean health officials close a large wholesale fruit and vegetable market following detection of a cluster of 3 SARS cases linked to the market. Cases are traced back to the 64-year-old vegetable hawker. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. 61. Table 4.1 continued. Date. Event. The 22nd of April, Chinese authorities report a cumulative total of 2,001 SARS cases with 92 deaths. The 23rd of April, Beijing officials suspend all primary and secondary schools for a 2-week period. Chinese authorities report a cumulative total of 2,305 probable cases of SARS and 106 deaths. The number of cases in Beijing is now 693. In Singapore, 8 probable and 14 suspect SARS cases are now linked to the vegetable hawker at the wholesale market. WHO advises travelers to Beijing and Shaanxi Province, China, and Toronto, Canada, to consider postponing all but essential travel. The cumulative number of probable SARS cases climbs to 4,288, with 251 deaths. China reports 106 of the deaths and Hong Kong reports 105. This was the end of the move essentially, as WHO announced 2 days before they saw signs that the outbreaks had peaked. This was the last big scare for the Far East. The 25th of April, outbreaks in Hanoi, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Toronto show signs of peaking. The 28th of April, Vietnam is removed from the list of areas with recent local transmission, making it the first country to successfully contain its outbreak. The cumulative total number of cases surpasses 5,000. The 30th of April, WHO lifts its travel advice for Toronto. The Canadian dollar didn't experience the same roller coaster ride that the Far East did with SARS. However, individual companies in the entertainment and travel fields were hurt as tourism dropped. Canadian-based Four Seasons Hotels Inc. operates luxury hotels under the Four Seasons and Regent brand names. While the stock experienced volatility at this time, it didn't see much downside with the outbreak in Canada. The outbreak in Canada was mild compared to the Far East and therefore the stocks of travel and entertainment companies didn't experience severe reactions. See Figure 4.7. China, accounting for 3,460 probable cases of the global total of 5,663, now has more cases than the rest of the world combined. The 2nd of May. The 3rd of May. The 7th of May. The 8th of May. The cumulative total of cases surpasses 6,000. WHO sends a team to Taiwan, which is now reporting a cumulative total of 100 probable cases. WHO estimates that the case fatality ratio of SARS ranges from 0% to 50% depending on the age group affected, with an overall estimate of case fatality of 14% to 15%. Travel recommendations are extended to Tianjin and Inner Mongolia in China and to Taipei, Taiwan. Continues. 62. Infectious diseases. Table 4.1 continued. Date. Event. The 13th of May. Outbreaks at the remaining initial sites show signs of coming under control, indicating that SARS can be contained. The 14th of May. Toronto removed from the list of areas with recent local transmission. The 17th of May. Travel recommendations are extended to Hebei Province, China. The 21st of May. Travel recommendations are extended to all of Taiwan. The 22nd of May. Health authorities in Canada inform WHO of a new hospital-based cluster of 5 cases of acute respiratory illness in Toronto. The cumulative global total of cases surpasses 8,000. The 23rd of May. Travel recommendations for Hong Kong and Guangdong Province are removed. Note: we did see a positive spike to Shangri-La, Cathay Pacific, and the Singapore dollar upon this announcement. Even better, you could buy these over the next couple of days and still have made money. In other words, the all clear was sounded and still there were opportunities to buy the stock. The overall positive equity environment spurred by extremely low interest rates dominated the short-term negative impact of the SARS outbreak. Research teams in Hong Kong and China announced detection of a SARS-like virus in the masked palm civet and raccoon dog. These and other wild animals are traditionally consumed as delicacies and sold for human consumption in markets throughout southern China. The 26th of May. Toronto returns to the list of areas with recent local transmission. The 31st of May. Singapore is removed from the list of areas with recent local transmission. By this time, the Singapore dollar had already regained all the lost ground that occurred in March and April. The 3rd of June. The number of newly reported probable cases in China declines to a weekly average of slightly more than 2. The 12th of June, a team of senior WHO officials arrives in Beijing to assess the situation of SARS control in China. The 13th of June, travel recommendations for Hebei, Inner Mongolia, Shaanxi and Tianjin provinces, China, are removed. Guangdong, Hebei, Hubei, Inner Mongolia, Jilin, Jiangsu, Shaanxi, Shaanxi and Tianjin provinces are removed from the list of areas with recent local transmission. The 17th of June, travel alert is lifted for Taiwan. The 18th of June, the global outbreak enters its 100th day as the number of new cases reported daily dwindles to a handful. The 23rd of June, Hong Kong is removed from the areas with recent local transmission. The 24th of June, travel recommendations are removed for Beijing, the last remaining area subject to WHO travel advice. Beijing is also removed from the list of areas with recent local transmission. Source: World Health Organization. Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, SARS. 63. Figure 4.1 Shangri-La Asia Limited Source, used with permission from Bloomberg LP. Figure 4.2 Canadian dollar. Source, used with permission from Bloomberg LP. 64. Infectious diseases. Figure 4.3 Singapore dollar source, used with permission from Bloomberg LP. Figure 4.4 South Korean won. Source, used with permission from Bloomberg LP. Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, SARS. 65. Figure 4.5 Japanese yen source, used with permission from Bloomberg LP. Figure 4.6 Cathay Pacific Airways Limited source, used with permission from Bloomberg LP. 66. Infectious diseases. Figure 4.7 Four Seasons Hotels Inc. Source, used with permission from Bloomberg LP. And American Airlines all experienced a drop of between 3 and 5%. Air Canada was already in a weak position and the stock price further deteriorated, dropping from C$3 to C$1 as the company flirted with bankruptcy. Figure 4.8. In contrast, drug companies that were associated with providing a cure or a test did well, and Gilead Sciences Gilt went up as fast as the airline stocks went down. Figure 4.9. One more general point is that disease outbreaks have sharp, short-term impacts that either exacerbate the trends in place or provide temporary pops in the other direction. As you saw in the preceding chapter, the Federal Reserve was in the process of cutting interest rates to extremely low levels when SARS broke out. This is generally US dollar negative and equity positive. All of the stocks quickly recovered, as did the currencies that were negatively impacted. Disease outbreaks offer traders and investors great opportunities to make money, if they can maintain composure and act. You can either go with the direction the disease is heading by selling the region impacted, or you can fade the move by buying into the sell-off in expectation of a relatively quick rebound. For the fade, the risk is that the disease has a longer, more protracted effect. In that case, just like during the Black Death, the best trade will be staying alive. To reduce risk, you can buy a stock of an industry that severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. 67. Figure 4.8 Air Canada. Source: used with permission from Bloomberg LP. Figure 4.9 Gilead Sciences. Source: used with permission from Bloomberg LP. 68. Infectious diseases. Is impacted, but not in the region. It's the market painting with a broad brush when it sells all the stocks in an industry just because some of them are negatively impacted. And it's a great opportunity to take advantage of as the industry leaders will rebound. Without sounding too opportunistic, this is why professional traders do well in times of social upheaval. They have a game plan for when opportunity strikes. CHAPTER 5. Bird flu. The avian flu or bird flu is an unusual twist to our section on infectious diseases. Unlike the previous outbreaks, this one has already been predicted with possible cataclysmic results. It just hasn't happened yet and begs the question, will it happen? Our work from the previous chapters is the foundation for approaching this unique situation. Therefore, this chapter is going to be like the ghost of Christmas future, as we'll peer into the possibility of a pandemic flu outbreak that has not yet occurred, but could. Bird flu has a long history, and the virus has been recognized as a highly lethal disease of poultry since 1901. In 1955, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO) identified a specific type of influenza virus as the causal agent of what was then called fowl plague. In 1997, there were outbreaks of this highly pathogenic H5N1 type virus in poultry farms and wet markets in Hong Kong. Not long after, Hong Kong reported human infections with the virus, with 18 cases and 6 fatalities. This is the first reported incidence of human infection with the H5N1 virus. Since then, the reports of bird deaths have been accelerating and spreading throughout the world almost as fast as doomsayers pushing the panic button on another 1918 Spanish flu. From Indonesia to Azerbaijan to Iraq, there have been confirmed human cases as the migratory patterns of birds have spread the disease. In fact, the H5N1 avian influenza has spread so far and so fast that it is endemic in the Far East and may become that way for Europe and Africa. It is estimated that the global fight against the disease currently needs as much as $1.3 billion to $1.5 billion to fund prevention and research over the next 2 years to prevent a massive outbreak. Itis widely. 69. 70. Infectious diseases. Estimated that millions of people could die if bird flu mutates into a form that can be transmitted from human to human like a seasonal flu. This chapter reviews what is currently understood about the disease, where it may be going, and how to respond should it happen. What we know about influenza. The following list is taken from the World Health Organization (WHO's) Top 10 about a pandemic influenza, www.int/csr/disease/influenza/pandemic 10 things n. 1. Pandemic influenza is different from avian influenza. Avian influenza refers to a large group of different influenza viruses that primarily affect birds. On rare occasions, these bird viruses can infect other species, including pigs and humans. The vast majority of avian influenza viruses do not infect humans. An influenza pandemic happens when a new subtype emerges that has not previously circulated in humans. For this reason, avian H5N1 is a strain with pandemic potential, since it might ultimately adapt into a strain that is contagious among humans. Once this adaptation occurs, it will no longer be a bird virus, it will be a human influenza virus. Influenza pandemics are caused by new influenza viruses that have adapted to humans. 2. Influenza pandemics are recurring events. An influenza pandemic is a rare but recurrent event. 3 pandemics occurred in the previous century: Spanish influenza, in 1918, Asian influenza, in 1957, and Hong Kong influenza, in 1968. The 1918 pandemic killed an estimated 40 to 50 million people worldwide. That pandemic, which was exceptional, is considered one of the deadliest disease events in human history. Subsequent pandemics were much milder, with an estimated 2 million deaths in 1957 and 1 million deaths in 1968. A pandemic occurs when a new influenza virus emerges and starts spreading as easily as normal influenza, by coughing and sneezing. Because the virus is new, the human immune system will have no pre-existing immunity. This makes it likely that people who contract pandemic influenza will experience more serious disease than that caused by normal influenza. Bird flu. 71. 3. The world may be on the brink of another pandemic. Health experts have been monitoring a new and extremely severe influenza virus, the H5N1 strain, for almost 8 years as of October 14, 2005. The H5N1 strain first infected humans in Hong Kong in 1997, causing 18 cases, including 6 deaths. Since mid-2003, this virus has caused the largest and most severe outbreaks in poultry on record. In December 2003, infections in people exposed to sick birds were identified. Since then, over 100 human cases have been laboratory confirmed in 4 Asian countries: Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, and more than half of these people have died. Most cases have occurred in previously healthy children and young adults. Fortunately, the virus does not jump easily from birds to humans or spread readily and sustainably among humans. Should H5N1 evolve to a form as contagious as normal influenza, a pandemic could begin. 4. All countries will be affected. Once a fully contagious virus emerges, its global spread is considered inevitable. Countries might, through measures such as border closures and travel restrictions, delay arrival of the virus, but they cannot stop it. The pandemics of the previous century encircled the globe in 6 to 9 months, even when most international travel was by ship. Given the speed and volume of international air travel today, the virus could spread more rapidly, possibly reaching all continents in less than 3 months. 5. Widespread illness will occur. Because most people will have no immunity to the pandemic virus, infection and illness rates are expected to be higher than during seasonal epidemics of normal influenza. Current projections for the next pandemic estimate that a substantial percentage of the world's population will require some form of medical care. Few countries have the staff, facilities, equipment, and hospital beds needed to cope with large numbers of people who suddenly fall ill. 6. Medical supplies will be inadequate. Supplies of vaccines and antiviral drugs, the 2 most important medical interventions for reducing illness and deaths during a pandemic,